Tonight in prime time, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Atlanta Falcons at the Georgia Dome.
A good old-fashioned NFC South rivalry game, Tom.
Well, it's a rivalry game. It's one game that scares the heck out of me right now.
Yeah, it does.
Right now, we're just not sure exactly who's in and who's out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this evening. But Greg Auman's going to be joining us in just a couple of minutes here, and he's going to get us up to date from the Georgia Dome on the McCoy situation, maybe even Doug Martin as well. We're going to find that out. But we also want to invite you to call into this show at 813-367-0171. That's 813-367-0171. We'll be taking your calls throughout the evening. And we also have another guest joining us in the second segment. That'll be Zach Klein, who is the WSB TV sports director, and he'll be updating us on the Atlanta Falcons.
And you can also reach us via social media by using the hashtag #ThePlank on Twitter, and we'll be reading your tweets as we go on here as well. So it's going to be a very interesting game coming up here, kick off in about an hour and a half.
Yeah, it is. And so the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 0-2 against the Atlanta Falcons, who are 1-1. Atlanta coming off a loss to the Cincinnati Bengals last week. They came up with that big win in Week 1 against the New Orleans Saints, which I think was probably the eye-opener. But then again,
yes,
Matty Ice loves to play in the Dome, and that scares the hell out of me.
And Matt Ryan is almost like Drew Brees, where they both thrive at home in the Dome in Atlanta or in New Orleans. And when you have a high potent offense like the Atlanta Falcons with Matt Ryan, now granted, we just found out Roddy White is not going to play, and Greg Auman is going to talk to us about that in just a little bit. He still has other weapons on the wide receiving core that could hurt this depleted, injured, thin Bucs defense.
And certainly one of the big stories that we're looking at right now is the situation of Gerald McCoy. Is he in? Is he out? He was wearing a cast throughout the entire week. And frankly, you just can't play defensive tackle with a cast. I can't see it. He would just become just your average to mediocre player in there. It'd be more of a hindrance than it would be a help.
Yeah, it definitely would not help his cause. And not only that, I read somewhere that when you have that type of injury, it's crucial in the 10 days after hurting it that is the most fragile in that broken hand. So you're not going to want to risk that chance of getting him injured again. And you know what? He's not going to want to risk that chance of getting hurt again either, TK, because guess what? He's in a contract year.
And that's it. So Greg Auman will be joining us here in a couple of minutes. We're waiting his call from the Georgia Dome. Who knows, maybe atmospheric interference, but I'm sure he'll be joining us. But once again, we'll open up the phone lines. We want to get your ideas on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and what you're expecting from them tonight, and also the fact of obviously one of the biggest concerns of this football team right now, and it should not be a concern, is quarterback Josh McCown, who has come up with 3 turnovers in the first 2 games, and all 3 of those turnovers have played a big part in the losses of the Buccaneers against Carolina and then last week against the Rams.
When Josh McCown signed with the Bucs earlier in the year, you and I talked about, you know what, it's his leadership, it's his decision-making that is just outstanding, and that's the reason why Lovie Smith decided to bring him in. But guess what? His decision-making right now has been really bad. 3 interceptions by horrible passing, and of course last week's coming in the red zone. You cannot have red zone interceptions rather than anything red zone turnovers in the National Football League. All right. That will hurt you.
Well, while we wait for Greg, why don't we go to Mike now in Tampa, who joins us here on the Plank. Good evening, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and you know what? Speaking of Josh McCown, that's exactly what my question is, because we brought Josh McCown in to be our starter when I feel like last year Mike Glennon, he took his, he was a rookie, he came in, he took over for Freeman, he took his bumps and bruises, which is he's going to go through as a rookie. But Josh McCown's been in the league for 12 years, and he's coming in, he's making rookie mistakes. That first interception he threw was the exact same play that he threw the interception in Week 1 when he was scrambling to his right and trying to throw the ball across his body. I feel like Josh McCown is another Alvin Harper experiment when you bring in a number 2 receiver to be a number 1 receiver. It just doesn't happen. You can't bring a backup in to be your starting quarterback. I'm glad that Lovie has so much confidence in him, but it's not showing here early in the season, and we can't afford to have any more losses going into this season. Our division is tough enough as it is, and I mean, at some point, we're going to have to think about Josh McCown and bringing Glennon back into the game. Yeah,
Mike, you bring up a really good point, and frankly, I was really surprised at the first 2 turnovers against Carolina. One of them, though, he said it was just he just got hit on the throw.
Right.
And he said that's just a play that's made in football, but he said the other one was just a gross turnover that he just certainly did not want to produce. And then he comes back the following week and does the same thing, as Mike said.
And it was in the second quarter, game tied at 7, first and goal. That is a rookie mistake, and this is coming from a 35-year-old veteran quarterback. Don't you agree that he may be putting too much pressure on himself, that he's just trying to force things because he knows, hey, you know what, I finally have a team that I'm a starting quarterback on a consistent basis. He hasn't been a starting quarterback. I hadn't started a season as a quarterback, what, since 07, 08? Don't you think he's maybe putting too much pressure on himself? Maybe that's contributing?
He said he's putting pressure on himself, but, you know, Mike's watched the games, and I'm sure a number of you have watched the games out there. I think the problem that they had with McCown is that he doesn't have enough time. I think that's part of it. I think he's being rushed. I think his decision-making is being rushed. I think he needs help up front. He's going to certainly have to have that tonight against Atlanta. And also the fact he did have last week, though, that did not contribute to his ill-fated efforts against Carolina was a running game. And Rainey rushing for 144 yards. I certainly hope this guy's starting tonight. You know, we'll see how that situation is with Doug.
But when we talk about earlier in the summer, what were the big concerns heading into this football team? It wasn't going to be the quarterback. It was the offensive line. And that is clearly, you know, causing Josh McCown a lot of problems. It's affecting this running game that Jeff Tedford was going to revolve his offensive system around. But then you have Doug Martin injured. You have Charles Sims, the rookie, go down. You rely on Bobby Rainey. This season has started to go from a lot of great expectations to possibly a 0-5 start with this tough schedule coming up if they can't win tonight.
Well, let's not try to get ahead of our schedule, especially with an 0-5 situation. Mike, thank you for the call. We appreciate it. You can join us, folks, at 813-367-0171. That's 813-367-0171. We're waiting to hook up with Greg Auman from the Tampa Bay Times, the Buccaneer beat writer. He'll give us the up-to-date information as it's happening right now as far as the inactives are concerned for this football game tonight. We do understand that Jeff Tedford, the offensive coordinator, is not going to be calling plays tonight. Marcus Arroyo is.
Right. Jeff Tedford's still not 100% healthy from the heart surgery from a few weeks ago. Did not make the trip to Atlanta. It's going to be Arroyo again, which begs the question, how much of some of these play calls that you had a couple questions, TK, that you and I talked about from last week against St. Louis, was that because of Arroyo making those calls? What would have Tedford done in that situation?
Well, the one call in particular, I think everybody is trying to figure out, and frankly, when Josh McCown was asked about it after Sunday's game in that loss to the Rams, they said, what did you think when the call came in on 3rd and 7 at the Rams 9 that it was a running play? And he said, well, I was kind of surprised at it. And then the follow-up question by Gary Shelton from the Tampa Bay Times was, do you think that because of your interception inside the red zone earlier in that game precipitated that call? Because they never threw the football in the red zone in that game. And frankly, Josh looked at us, he hesitated, and he stopped and he said, I certainly hope not. I certainly hope not. And that's something I would venture to say that was in discussion. But I don't like the fact that Tedford's not there. This will be the 3rd consecutive game in a row without their offensive coordinator.
That's not what you want from a team that had so many changes, and also to a new coordinator who installed the system. Now, granted, people may not realize Arroyo pretty much played under the system with Tedford back at Cal many years ago.
Right. All right, we do have Greg Auman on the line, Tampa Bay Times Buccaneer beat reporter. Greg, we appreciate you joining us from the Georgia Dome. And I know a lot of people here on the show tonight are wondering, what is the situation right now with Gerald McCoy?
Yeah, we just got news that they're going to be inactive. Both Gerald McCoy and Doug Martin will not play tonight. They're not dressing up. That's key leaders on both sides of the ball that will be missing, as well as linebacker Mason Foster and rookie tight end Austin Seferian-Jenkins.
Yeah, it's interesting. Doug Martin, this is somewhat of a surprise because if I'm not mistaken, that Doug Martin was working out with the first team this week, wasn't he?
Yeah, when the last day we saw practice, he did get the first reps of the first team. He was listed as having full participation. They listed him as questionable, which by the NFL injury math is a 50-50 call. But I think part of it might be the fact that Bobby Rainey played as well as he did last week. They don't want to rush an injury if they have somebody else in the position who's playing well.
Yeah, well, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, and going up against the defensive side of the ball, Greg, you have Dane Fletcher making his first career start for Mason Foster. this doesn't bode well for the Bucs defense when you have Matt Ryan, who can just pick apart defenses with his high potent offense without Roddy White, who we just also found out is also inactive today, correct?
Right, there is no Roddy White, and that helps. The main concern with Dane Fletcher is that Mason Foster is in charge of directing that defense in terms of lining everybody up, getting all the pieces in the right places. So this is as much a mental challenge today as it is anything physical for Dane Fletcher. He's been a linebacker, he's been a middle linebacker, he's been in key roles before. In this defense, this is big for him to step in and have to kind of direct traffic tonight against the passing game that's put up a ton of yards in the first two games.
Right. One of the things that about Matt Ryan, especially in that Georgia Dome, is if that guy stays in the pocket, he picks you apart. He's a quarterback that you've got to get on the move one way or the other. You've got to get the pressure up front, in the middle, to force him left, force him right. And he does make mistakes if that happens, but I just don't know whether or not they got it, Greg, in order to get that pressure up front tonight.
No, when you think about Gerald McCoy being out, when you think about Adrian Claiborne being out, when you think about Michael Johnson being here, but probably not 100% with that ankle, that's three of their top four defensive linemen that won't be where they need to be. So they're going to have to generate that pass rush with guys that aren't used to being starters, guys that aren't used to being in this position. So they need Will Golston to step up. They need Clinton McDonald and Akeem Spence to step up inside. And they probably need Michael Johnson to play like they expected him to be going into the season. If they can get to Matt Ryan, I think the Bengals showed last week that under pressure they'll make mistakes and give you turnovers.
One of the other things, too, is that we understand that Tedford is not going to be making the calls tonight. Arroyo's going to be in the box or down low again tonight. How much do you think, Greg, in your mind, has this contributed to the offense and its lack of productivity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly a factor. It's hard to know how much. I think Tedford has been in the booth for the first two games, so he's been there just as a voice, as another set of eyes. He's not even here in Atlanta. He did not travel with the team, so they're actually down a body here in the press box or in the coach's booth here in the Dome. Marshall Arroyo knows this offense. He's been with Jeff Tedford, understands the principles, the philosophies, the tendencies. It's just one less offensive mind you have to notice things, to pick up things, to improvise and see changes they can make during a game.
Now, Greg, we heard during the week that Marcus Arroyo, who will be calling the plays on the offensive side of the ball, the quarterback's coach, still has a lot of faith and a lot of trust in Josh McCown, and so does Lovie Smith. If for whatever reason Josh McCown has a horrible start in this game in the first half, would you be surprised if they made a quarterback change?
Yeah, I guess I'd still be surprised. There's still a lot of confidence in Josh McCown. If you look at him, he absolutely has made three bad mistakes on the turnovers that have cost points and really contributed to both losses so far. But in terms of understanding his offense, he's gotten a ton more reps than Mike Lennon has. Again, anything's possible if he comes out and makes the same kind of mistake, especially if the game they think they can win. I still would be surprised if you get a change made at quarterback today.
I got to ask you now, what concerns me is that, say, Tedford is not there. Is there something that maybe Jeff has taken a step back in his rehab from that heart procedure?
Yeah, I mean, Lovie Smith was adamant this week that there has been no setback. He kept saying he was on schedule. So the fact that he isn't here, I guess, brings that into question. They say that Jeff Tedford will be back to work as normal on Monday, and the plan is to have him resume full play calling next week when they're on the road at Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well, Greg, I got to ask you, what do you think about this game tonight? Frankly, I just don't see the Buccaneers having a chance in this one. I don't see pressure at all. They're going to have to bring more than the front four because they're not going to get it from that front four. That may leave some openings, especially for Roddy White across the middle. Your thoughts on this game tonight? Who do you like?
Yeah, you don't have to worry about Roddy White. Roddy White's inactive, so you have to worry about Julio Jones. He's the main thing you have to worry about.
Julio Jones. Julio Iglesias. I'd take Julio Iglesias if I could get it.
There you go. The two things I say have to happen if the Bucs are in this game is they have to absolutely move on this defense. They have to take advantage of a defense that's given up a ton of yards and points, has no sacks in the first two games. They have to be productive on offense. They're not going to win this game with 17 or 14 points. And I would tell you that the defense has to create turnovers. They have to do what they haven't done these first two games. Get picks, get fumbles, and turn them into points, whether directly or in setting up the offense. They have to help the offense out tonight.
All right, Greg. Well, listen, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot for the update from the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. And we will be seeing you next week right here on The Plank. Thank you.
All right, take care, guys.
Okay, that is Greg Auman, Tampa Bay Times Buccaneer beat reporter, joining us from the Georgia Dome with the update. Okay, Doug Martin not playing tonight. Nope. Rainey's going to start. I like that. And I'll tell you what, I hate to say it. They say that injuries should not dictate whether a player loses his starting role. But if Rainey comes out hot tonight and plays well tonight against Atlanta, he's my guy. He was my guy in Week 1. And I've always backed him up.
If it's not broken, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right?
Right.
Why would you go back to Doug Martin if he's not 100%? I was even surprised that we even had this discussion a couple days ago. If he's still not 100%, why was he even going to attempt to play in this game?
It was kind of an ill-fated attempt, I think, perhaps by Lovey and the gang trying to get Atlanta. Trying to figure out, well, okay, is Martin back in? Is he not?
Yeah.
All right, well, we got some pigskin picks coming up here.
Yeah,
right?
Pigskin Picks. Head on over to abcactionnews.com/theplank and pick your favorite teams to win each week. You have up until 5 minutes before kickoff of each game. Now, if you win, you're eligible to win a trip to Hawaii. That's pretty nice. I think you and I would love that. Make your picks and see how you do against all of us each week. And so far, leaderboard after a few weeks here, Ellis Walker, 18 picks. He has those correctly. And then from our station, Dennis Phillips, high scorer in the nation, 26. So,
is he the only one playing?
You know what? I only have the top 2 scores here. So
our producer, Christy O'Sullivan, said, I'm playing. So there's 2.
I was going to put my picks in here, but obviously I didn't want to win it all and not take you on a vacation if I wanted.
Well, here's my thought is that if we're going to have this pigskin picks in this deal, what we need to do is you and I need to chaperone this trip to Hawaii. So I need to talk to our producer.
That's true. Right. Got to make sure everyone's in line.
All right, folks, we're going to come back with more on the plank here, presented by Jeep. The number to call, join us here on the line, 813-367-0171. That's 813-367-0171. Zach Klein from WSB TV in Atlanta will be joining us here and talk about the Falcons when we come back.